Michael Kunz, manager, Mercedes-Benz Classic Center USA.
We've just started your 1960 four-door touring convertible. What is the actual name for this vehicle?
This is a 1960 Mercedes-Benz 300D, lowercase d, Adenaeur cabriolet.
You always make a point of saying lowercase d.
Well, we don't want to confuse it with a 300 diesel. That would be an uppercase D. Lowercase denotes in this case, the fourth edition of this car. When the car was introduced in 1951, it came out as a 300, and then went through several revisions. And the first revision was called a 300B, a lowercase b. And then the second one was a 300C, and then the third version of the car was a 300D. And that's what this is commonly referred to as, but it also has another name. It's called an Adenaeur. An Adenaeur was the name of the first post-war Chancellor of Germany. Konrad Adenauer represented the rebirth of Germany, and he became associated with this car because this really was the type of car that a head of state would drive or would be driven in. So Konrad Adenauer received a 300 at the time in early 1952, and throughout his reign in Germany, he was often driven in a 300 series car, and even the 300D. His particular car was also an open car, a bit more stretched than this car, and he also had closed version cars. The 300D was also known as one of the first Pope-mobiles. The Pope at the time, in 1960, was presented with the 300D that had a slightly different configuration as this car, in that it had a single throne, if you will, in the rear of the car where he would sit and could view the public.
He probably had quite a bit of security in his car.
He had a lot of security and a lot of people following him, but of course those were different times, and not quite like today where security is absolutely not possible in an open car. So 300Ds or 300 series cars were known as cars for kings and queens and heads of state, and they were something special. They were hand-built by our factory in Sindelfingen in various configurations. Most of the cars were closed-body cars, hardtop cars that had no pillar in the center of the glasswork. This particular car as a cabriolet was especially rare. Only 65 of the cars were built in cabriolet configuration.
Now, you built this from 1960 to 1962?
The final version of the car is a 300D. Came out in 1959 and was built until 1962.
So you had four-door touring cars before the war?
Absolutely. Four-door touring cars were pretty commonplace. We have them in various different configurations, including models such as the 630, the 500 Nürburgring, the 770, and so forth. So we have a history of making four-door convertibles. This particular car is the last four-door convertible that we made under the Mercedes-Benz brand.
Michael, you're going to show us some of the distinctions between this car, the 300D, and the predecessors for this car.
Yeah, this particular car is the last version of this series. We had a couple of different models under the 300 family. Started as a 300 in November of 51, progressed into a revised model called the 300B, followed by the 300C, and this particular car, which is called the 300D. The 300Ds were thoroughly revised cars compared to the predecessor cars. Some of the characteristics are the upright tail lamps here in the back. That was a new design. The previous version having a somewhat 300SL-like small horizontal lamp, in this case a vertical lamp. Also a highlight of this car is the cabriolet roof. This has a bit of a pre-war look to it with the Landau bars, something you really didn't see too much in the 1950s and 60s anymore, and this was somewhat of a holdover from the pre-war design. The rede positioning lamps and mirrors are very interesting here. They play two roles in that they have a kind of like a positioning lamp here, and they function as a mirror as well. And that's a period accessory that you could get on the car, was not standard on the car. The 300D also had a very vertical nose. The 300C that preceded it had more of a slope nose and the slope tail headlamp treatment. This car is very vertical. So that was a design change that was specific to the 300D series of the car.
Show us the inside, the interior of this vehicle.
The interior is really spectacular, starting, of course, with the dash, the burlwood dash. What a masterpiece, really a feast for the eyes. This interior has a beautiful leather treatment here. This particular car was modified somewhat by the owner. The previous owner, he decided to include power windows. That was not something that you could get back then. Plus he added air conditioning to the car, but he did a great job in terms of integrating the design.
Now these speakers, they were real back then?
That's original to the car, the speakers.
And what does that cover? It looks like lamb's wool or something.
It's like a velour fabric that allows the sound to go through it.
And what is the most technologically advanced piece on this car for that time?